She stood outside the private fitting room holding a custom size 22 gown, only to hear her fiancé laughing inside with his mistress about her disgusting weight. Broken and publicly humiliated, Penelope did the unthinkable. She walked straight into the arms of Dante Moretti, the most ruthless crime boss in Chicago. Rain lashed against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Maison de Belle, Chicago's most exclusive bridal boutique, located right in the heart of the Gold Coast. Penelope Hayes, 28 years old, and the sole inheritor of Hayes Global Logistics, stared at her reflection in the gilded mirror. She was a big woman carrying a size 22 frame, with a natural commanding presence that dominated boardrooms. For years, society had tried to make her feel small because of her weight, but she had built a thick skin. She was fat, she was successful, and she was fiercely intelligent. Yet looking at the sprawling white silk of her custom-made wedding dress, a rare vulnerability washed over her. Gregory Carmichael had promised her the world. He was a rising star in the city's commercial real estate sector, charming, conventionally handsome, and supposedly completely enamored with her. Whenever her insecurities flared up, Gregory would hold her close, whispering that she was his goddess, his wealthy queen, and that her curves were exactly what he craved. Penelope stepped off the pedestal, the heavy silk whispering against the plush carpet. Gregory was supposed to be waiting in the VIP lounge next door, having arrived early to drop off the deposit for the floral arrangements. She wanted to surprise him with a sneak peek of the dress. Pushing open the heavy mahogany door just a crack, Penelope froze. Gregory wasn't alone. He was pinned against the leather sofa by Sylvia, the boutique's lead consultant, a woman whose waist was roughly the size of one of Penelope's thighs. Sylvia's hands were buried in Gregory's hair, and their lips were locked in a desperate, hungry kiss. Penelope's breath hitched, but it was the conversation that followed that entirely shattered her reality. "You're cutting it close, Greg," Sylvia purred, pulling back and tracing his jawline. "The wedding is in 3 weeks. How much longer do I have to pretend to be nice to that beached whale?" Gregory laughed, a cruel, jagged sound that Penelope had never heard before. "Just 3 more weeks, baby, I promise. Once that ring is on her pudgy finger, I officially become co-owner of Hayes Logistics." Her father set the trust up so her husband gets 50% voting rights. "And what about her?" Sylvia sneered, glancing toward the closed door. "You actually have to sleep with her. The thought of you suffocating under all that fat makes me sick." Gregory sighed, swirling a glass of complimentary champagne. "It's a sacrifice. She's huge, Sylvia. Disgusting, really. It's like sleeping next to a waterbed made of pure lard. But she is desperate for love. Fat girls always are. You give them a little bit of attention, tell them they're beautiful, and they hand over the keys to the kingdom. Once the merger is complete, and I have control of the shipping routes, I'll put her on a permanent diet of neglect. I'll keep her locked in that penthouse, and you and I will run the city." Penelope felt the blood drain from her face, replaced instantly by a rushing, roaring inferno in her ears. Every sweet word, every gentle touch, every reassurance Gregory had ever offered her was a meticulously calculated manipulation. He hadn't just betrayed her heart, he had weaponized her deepest physical insecurities to steal her father's multi-million-dollar legacy. She didn't cry. Tears were for victims, and Penelope Hayes was no one's victim. Taking a slow, stabilizing breath, Penelope pushed the heavy mahogany door wide open. It slammed against the wall with a thunderous crack that made both Gregory and Sylvia jump out of their skin. Gregory's face went entirely pale. "Penny, Baby, wait, it's not what it looks like." Penelope walked into the room, her massive, commanding frame clad in the breathtaking white silk. She looked like an avenging angel, terrifying and beautiful. She approached the coffee table, her eyes dead, fixed on the man she had almost given her life to. "Save it, Gregory." Penelope's voice was dangerously calm, devoid of any hysterical sorrow. She reached up and unclasped the 3-carat diamond ring from her left hand. "You made one critical miscalculation in your little corporate espionage scheme." "Penny, please, you heard it wrong." Gregory stammered frantically, trying to button his shirt, stepping away from Sylvia, who was now cowering against the armrest. "I am fat." "Gregory," Penelope said, coldly, dropping the heavy diamond into his half-empty champagne glass. It sank to the bottom with a pathetic clink. "But I am not stupid. The wedding is off. The locks on the penthouse are being changed as we speak, and if you ever come within 50 feet of my shipping yards, I will personally see to it that you are crushed under an 18-wheeler. She turned her sharp gaze to the trembling consultant. "Keep the deposit, Sylvia. Buy yourself a conscience. And you'll need a new job because I am buying this boutique tomorrow, just to fire you." Without waiting for a response, Penelope turned and walked out of the store. She didn't bother changing. She stepped right out onto Michigan Avenue, the icy Chicago rain instantly soaking the expensive silk of her ruined wedding dress. She walked until her bare feet ached, the cold biting into her skin, her mind racing with a singular consuming thought. Gregory needed Hayes Logistics for a reason. He was into something dark, something illegal, and he had planned to use her clean, pristine fleet of trucks to transport it. She needed protection. She needed power. Above all, she needed absolute, devastating revenge. 3 hours later, Penelope sat in a dark corner booth of Lusso, an intensely private underground speakeasy, strictly reserved for Chicago's elite and dangerous. She had swapped her ruined bridal gown for a sleek black wrap dress that hugged her curves tightly. Her damp hair cascaded over her shoulders. The glass of Macallan whiskey in her hand was her third, though the alcohol did nothing to numb the burning rage in her chest. She knew why Gregory wanted her shipping routes. After pulling some rapid financial records on her phone, she discovered he owed money, a lot of money, to the cartel. He was planning to use Hayes Logistics to smuggle illicit cargo across the Canadian border to pay off his debts, using her as the perfect oblivious shield. "Rough day at the boutique, Miss Hayes." A deep, gravelly voice broke through her thoughts. Penelope looked up. Standing by her table was Dante Moretti. The air in the club seemed to drop 10 degrees. Dante was the undisputed king of Chicago's underworld. At 35, he was a towering figure of pure, predatory muscle, dressed in a bespoke charcoal suit that screamed old money and fresh blood. A faint, jagged scar ran down the left side of his face, stopping just above his jawline, a brutal reminder of how he had claimed his throne. People didn't just fear Dante. They avoided looking him in the eye, lest they invite their own demise. Penelope didn't flinch. She met his cold, dark eyes with a fiery glare of her own. "I don't recall inviting you to sit, Mr. Moretti." Dante's lips twitched into a dangerous half-smile. He slid into the curved leather booth across from her anyway. He signaled the bartender with 2 fingers, and instantly a fresh bottle of Macallan was brought to their table by a terrified waiter. "You're making a scene, Penelope," Dante said smoothly, pouring them both a generous measure, walking down Michigan Avenue in a wedding dress in the pouring rain. "Word travels fast in this city, especially to me." "Then you know Gregory and I are finished," Penelope replied, taking a sip of the burning liquid. "Which means whatever feud you have with him is no longer my concern." "On the contrary." Dante leaned forward, the ambient light catching the sharp, ruthless angles of his face. "It makes you my primary concern. Gregory is a cockroach trying to eat from my table. He thought he could use your clean logistics empire to run guns right under my nose, circumventing my docks. I am aware, Penelope stated flatly. I locked him out of the system an hour ago. Dante paused, a look of genuine intrigue crossing his features. His dark eyes roamed over her face, taking in her defiance. You're not crying. Your fiancé humiliated you, plotted to steal your birthright, and you are sitting here calculating your next business move. I have to admit, I am impressed. Save your flattery. What do you want, Dante? Dante rested his elbows on the table, his massive hands clasping together. I want to ruin him. Completely and utterly. And I want to secure the northern shipping routes without triggering a federal investigation. You want revenge, and you need protection from the men Gregory owes money to, because once they find out he lost his golden goose, they will come for you to collect his debt. Penelope's grip on her glass tightened. She knew he was right. So here is my proposal, Dante continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming a lethal, intimate hum. We merge our interests. You give me unrestricted, discreet access to your Canadian routes. In exchange, my syndicate provides absolute, impenetrable protection for you and your company. And Gregory, I will strip him of his wealth, his reputation, and eventually his life. I will give you his head on a silver platter. Penelope stared at the terrifying Mafia Don. It was a deal with the devil. But right now, the devil was the only one offering her a sword. There's a catch, Penelope said astutely. A simple handshake deal doesn't secure the routes legally. The board of directors at Hayes would flag any sudden massive involvement from a known associate like yourself. You are absolutely right, Dante said, his dark eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. Which is why we aren't going to shake hands on it. We are going to get married. Penelope choked on her whiskey, coughing violently as she slammed the glass down. Excuse me. You heard me, Dante said, smoothly unfazed. Gregory was right about one thing. Your father's trust stipulates your husband gains 50% voting rights. If I am your husband, my presence in the company is legally ironclad. The board can't say a word. It's the perfect cover. Are you insane? Penelope hissed, looking around to ensure no one was eavesdropping on the madness. I just walked out of one sham marriage designed to exploit me. Do you honestly think I'm going to walk into another one with the scariest criminal in the state? I am a criminal, Penelope, not a liar, Dante corrected sharply. I am putting my cards on the table. This is a business transaction. Mutual benefit. And unlike your pathetic ex-fiancé, I don't need to manipulate you to get what I want. I am offering you an alliance. I am not a trophy to be used for your gang wars. Penelope shot back, her insecurities bubbling to the surface. Look at me, Dante. I am a fat woman. I am not some mob wife arm candy you can parade around your underground casinos. Dante's expression darkened instantly. The playful, calculating businessman vanished, replaced by something primal and intense. He reached across the table, his large, warm hand wrapping around her wrist. The touch sent a jolt of electricity straight up her arm. Don't ever insult yourself in my presence again, Dante warned, his voice a low, vibrating growl. He didn't break eye contact as his thumb slowly stroked the erratic pulse at her wrist. I don't want a fragile, starving trophy wife who breaks when the wind blows. I need a queen. A woman who takes up space in a room and owns every inch of it. Gregory was a blind, arrogant fool who didn't know what to do with a real woman. I, on the other hand, know exactly what I am looking at. Penelope stared at him, entirely paralyzed by the raw, unfiltered hunger in his eyes. He wasn't patronizing her. He wasn't fetishizing her to mock her later. Dante Moretti looked at her massive, imposing frame and saw absolute power. He saw an equal. "Marry me, Penelope," Dante commanded, softly pulling a heavy platinum ring set with a flawless, square-cut black diamond from his jacket pocket. He set it on the table between them. "Give me your hand, and I swear to you, no one in this city will ever make you feel small again." Penelope looked at the black diamond, then up into the scarred, terrifying face of the man who ruled the city's shadows. Gregory had broken her heart, but Dante was offering to forge it into steel. Slowly, deliberately, Penelope reached out. She picked up the black diamond and slid it onto her left ring finger. It fit perfectly. "All right, Dante," Penelope whispered, a dark, dangerous smile finally curving her lips. "Let's go ruin his life." 72 hours later, Penelope stood before the towering mahogany doors of the Hayes Global Logistics Boardroom, located on the 42nd floor, overlooking Wacker Drive. She took a slow, deep breath, smoothing the lapels of her bespoke crimson blazer. The garment had been tailored overnight by Dante's personal clothier, designed to weaponize her size 22 frame rather than hide it. She looked magnificent, a titan of industry drenched in blood-red silk and ruthless ambition. On her left ring finger, the heavy black diamond caught the fluorescent hallway lights, a dark promise binding her to Chicago's most lethal predator. The heavy mahogany doors swung open. Inside, 12 board members sat around a massive glass table, their murmurs dying instantly. At the far end, lounging in a leather chair with arrogant comfort, sat Gregory Carmichael. He had bypassed building security, using his old clearance codes, a smug, venomous smirk plastered across his handsome face. He thought he still held the winning hand. Gregory stood up, buttoning his navy Tom Ford suit. "Penelope, sweetheart, I was beginning to think you wouldn't show. We have a lot of operational shifts to discuss. Since the wedding was abruptly postponed due to your emotional breakdown, I thought it best to step in and handle the Canadian border expansion myself." Penelope didn't blink. She walked slowly into the room, her presence commanding absolute silence. "There is no expansion, Gregory, and you have absolutely no authority in this building." "Oh, I think I do," Gregory chuckled, leaning heavily against the table. "Your father's trust clearly states that a fiancé with an active merger agreement maintains proxy voting rights during transitional periods. I've already authorized a fleet of 12 trucks to bypass standard way stations at the Toronto checkpoint tonight." He was doing it. He was moving the cartel's illegal cargo, using her trucks, effectively framing Hayes Logistics. "Proxy rights are nullified upon marriage. Gregory." Penelope stated, her voice echoing coldly against the glass walls. "And as of yesterday evening, in a private ceremony, officiated by a federal judge, I'm a married woman." The boardroom erupted into frantic whispers. Gregory's smirk faltered his face, draining of color. "Married? What kind of pathetic bluff is this? You didn't marry anyone, Penelope. You're a desperate, overweight woman clinging to her daddy's company. Nobody else would have you. I strongly suggest you rephrase that sentence, unless you want your jaw wired shut for the rest of your remarkably short life." That voice was a low, terrifying rumble that seemed to shake the very foundations of the skyscraper. From the shadows of the antechamber, Dante Moretti stepped into the boardroom. He wore a flawless black Brioni suit, the jagged scar on his face stark against his olive skin. The air in the room evaporated. Several board members gasped. One older executive actually dropped his pen, his hands trembling violently. Everyone in Chicago knew who Dante was. He was the ghost that haunted the city's underground, a man whose name was whispered in fear by politicians and police commissioners alike. Gregory stumbled backward, his knees buckling until he hit the edge of the glass table. "Moretti." "What? "What are you doing here?" Dante ignored him, walking straight to Penelope's side. He placed a large, possessive hand on her lower back, a gesture that sent a rush of heat straight to her core. He looked at the board, his dark eyes freezing every man and woman in their seats. "Gentlemen, I am Dante Moretti, co-owner of Hayes Global Logistics. My wife and I will be auditing all current shipping manifests starting immediately. Any routes authorized by Mr. Carmichael are officially terminated." "You can't do this!" Gregory screamed, panic destroying his composed facade. "Those trucks have to move tonight. If they don't cross the border, I am dead." "Then I suggest you buy a coffin," Dante whispered, his voice dangerously soft. He stepped toward Gregory, moving with the predatory grace of a panther. He grabbed Gregory by the lapels of his expensive suit and hoisted him effortlessly off the ground. "You tried to use my wife's company to run guns for the Sinaloa cartel. You tried to poison her empire. And worse, you insulted the woman who now carries my name. If you ever speak to her, look at her, or breathe the same air as her again, I will personally peel the skin from your bones." Dante tossed Gregory aside like a piece of garbage. Gregory crashed into a row of chairs, whimpering and scrambling toward the exit. The board members sat in petrified silence. Penelope looked at Dante, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. This was supposed to be a business arrangement, a shield against her enemies, but the way he had just defended her, the genuine fury in his eyes when Gregory insulted her weight, ignited a fire inside her that she had never felt before. Dante wasn't just using her. He respected her. He saw the queen hidden beneath decades of societal shaming, and he had crowned her. Once the boardroom was cleared of the terrified executives, Dante and Penelope stood alone amidst the expensive leather chairs. Dante turned to her, his intense gaze softening almost imperceptibly. He reached out his calloused thumb, gently brushing a stray lock of dark hair behind her ear. "Are you all right, Mayor Regina?" he asked softly, the Italian endearment sending shivers down her spine. Penelope looked up at the towering mafia boss. "You didn't have to throw him across the room, Dante. I could have handled him." "I know you could," Dante replied, his hand moving to rest warmly against her cheek. "But no man disrespects my wife and walks away without a bruise to remember me by. You are beautiful, Penelope. I need you to know that. Not just as a business partner, but as a woman." Penelope's breath caught in her throat. She had built walls of ice around her heart for years, relying on her intelligence and wealth to shield her from the cruelty of the world. But standing here with the most dangerous man in Chicago, she felt entirely safe. She leaned into his touch, her eyes fluttering shut for a fraction of a second, before her business instincts kicked back in. "Gregory is desperate now," Penelope said, opening her eyes, her strategic mind calculating the next move. "The cartel will demand their payment. He owes them $6 million in illegal weapons transport. When those trucks don't arrive in Toronto tonight, they will come for him." "Let them," Dante said coldly. "My men have already secured all your warehouses. No one touches Hayes Logistics. As for Gregory, he belongs to the wolves now." 2 weeks passed in a blur of corporate restructuring and whispered underworld negotiations. Penelope and Dante's marriage of convenience rapidly evolved into something fiercely passionate. Behind the locked doors of Dante's sprawling high-security estate in Lake Forest, they discovered a fiery, consuming connection. Dante worshipped her body, erasing every insecurity Gregory had ever planted in her mind. He traced the soft curves of her waist with reverence, making her feel like a goddess carved from marble. Penelope, in turn, grounded the chaotic darkness of Dante's life, bringing a brilliant logistical mind to his vast empire. They were an unstoppable force, ruling both the legitimate corporate world and the dark underbelly of Chicago. But a desperate animal is a dangerous animal. It was a Tuesday evening when the storm finally broke. Penelope had stayed late at the Wacker Drive office to finalize the payroll integration. Dante was across town, meeting with his capos at a private club. She was stepping into the private elevator in the underground parking garage when a cold, metallic barrel pressed firmly against her temple. "Don't scream, you fat bitch!" Gregory's voice hissed in her ear, trembling with manic desperation. Penelope froze, her pulse skyrocketing. She slowly turned her head, feeling the cold steel of the Glock slide against her skin. Gregory looked horrendous. His designer suit was wrinkled and stained, his eyes bloodshot, and he smelled of cheap liquor and sheer panic. Behind him stood Sylvia, clutching a designer handbag to her chest, her thin frame shaking violently. "The cartel gave me until midnight to pay them back," Gregory stammered, grabbing Penelope forcefully by the arm. "You're going to transfer $10 million from the Hayes corporate accounts into my offshore Cayman fund right now, or I'll blow your brains out." "You're an idiot, Gregory," Penelope said evenly, masking her terror with cold authority. "Transferring $10 million requires dual authorization from the CFO. It takes 24 hours to clear. You pull that trigger and you get absolutely nothing, except Dante Moretti hunting you down and skinning you alive." At the mention of Dante's name, Sylvia let out a sob. "I told you this was a bad idea, Greg. We should have just run. We can't mess with Moretti." "Shut up, Sylvia!" Gregory screamed, his finger twitching on the trigger. He shoved Penelope towards the back of a black SUV parked illegally in the disabled spot. "Get in the car. We're taking her to the warehouse. Once she makes the transfer, we hold her until the money clears." Suddenly, the harsh, fluorescent lights of the parking garage flickered and died, plunging the entire sub-level into pitch blackness. Gregory gasped, the gun wavering. "What's happening? Turn the lights on." A terrifying, rhythmic sound echoed through the cavernous concrete structure. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy footsteps echoing from every direction. The sound of a dozen firearms cocking in unison cut through the silence like a guillotine blade. Emergency backup lights flickered on, bathing the garage in a sickly yellow glow. Dante Moretti stood less than 20 feet away. He was flanked by 10 of his most lethal enforcers, all aiming suppressed assault rifles directly at Gregory's chest. Dante's face was devoid of all humanity. It was a mask of pure, concentrated death. "I warned you, Gregory." Dante's voice was a low, demonic whisper that carried clearly across the concrete. "I told you exactly what would happen if you ever breathed the same air as my wife again." Gregory whimpered, pressing the gun harder against Penelope's head. "Back off, I'll shoot her, Moretti. I swear to God I'll do it." Penelope didn't panic. She remembered what Dante had taught her during late-night conversations about survival in his world. Hesitation is death. With blinding speed for a woman her size, Penelope slammed her elbow backward, driving it with all her body weight directly into Gregory's ribs. She heard a sickening crack. Gregory shrieked in pain, the gun firing wildly into the concrete ceiling as he doubled over. Penelope instantly dropped to the floor, rolling away from the line of fire. In less than a second, Dante closed the distance. He didn't use a gun. He gripped Gregory by the throat, hoisting the treacherous coward entirely off the ground. Gregory clawed frantically at Dante's immovable grip, his face turning a deep, choking shade of purple. "Please!" Gregory choked out, his eyes bulging. Sylvia, entirely broken by fear, fell to her knees, screaming and holding her hands up in surrender. "Don't kill me, please. It was his idea. He used me just like he used her. I'll testify against him. I'll do anything." Penelope pushed herself off the ground, brushing the dust from her crimson trousers. She walked calmly over to the pathetic, sobbing woman. "I told you to buy a conscience, Sylvia. Take her to the police station. Penelope ordered one of Dante's men. She has a lot of confessing to do about corporate extortion. Dante still held Gregory suspended in the air, waiting for his wife's command. He looked at Penelope, his eyes burning with protective fury. What do you want me to do with him? Mia Regina. Penelope looked at the man who had tried to destroy her self-worth, the man who had laughed at her body and plotted to steal her father's legacy. He looked so small now, so completely pathetic compared to the magnificent, terrifying giant holding him. The cartel wants him, Penelope said coldly, her voice devoid of mercy. And Hayes Global Logistics never interferes with external supply chains. Throw him in the trunk. Let the Sinaloa boys collect their debt. Dante smiled a dark, feral grin. He tossed Gregory into the hands of his enforcers, who swiftly dragged the screaming, sobbing man into the shadows, tossing him into the back of an unmarked van. Gregory Carmichael's life was over. The underworld would swallow him whole, and no one would ever find the pieces. The garage fell silent, save for the distant hum of traffic from the Chicago streets above. Dante turned to Penelope. Without a word, he pulled her into his massive arms, crushing her against his chest. He buried his face in her hair, inhaling deeply. "You are magnificent," Dante whispered fiercely against her neck. "A true queen of the underworld. You didn't even flinch!" Penelope wrapped her arms around his broad shoulders, holding the scariest Mafia Don in the city, tighter than she had ever held anything. She wasn't just a wealthy heiress anymore, and she certainly wasn't the fat, desperate victim Gregory had tried to manipulate. She was Penelope Moretti. She ruled the logistics empire of the Midwest, and she was loved fiercely, completely, and passionately by a king who worshipped every single inch of her. "We have a board meeting tomorrow morning, Mr. Moretti," Penelope murmured against his chest, a soft, triumphant smile playing on her lips. "I expect you to be on time." Dante pulled back, looking down into her eyes with a love so intense it rivaled the darkness of the city itself. "For you, my queen, I will always be right by your side." If you loved this dramatic tale of ultimate betrayal, mafia justice, and a strong woman claiming her true power, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more intense, real-life story audios that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that true queens always conquer their enemies. Leave a comment below on what you thought of Penelope's revenge.